Hello everyone. I'm Ann Moore, the principal of Washington Township High School. Thank you for taking the time to view our presentation on the high school PARCC assessments. The goal of this presentation is to share information about the PARCC assessments as it relates to state and district graduation requirements, specific information about the high school testing schedule, and the proper care of the students' laptops in preparation for the assessment days. In addition, we'll hear from our supervisors of math and English with specific information about the content, tasks, and resources related to those areas of study. So we will begin with a review of the state regulations for the high school graduation assessments. What you are looking at right now is the ELA and math assessment requirements for the class of 2017. This slide contains 3 available pathways and the scores needed for students to meet the graduation requirement. Students who are members of the classes of 2018 and 2019, our sophomores and juniors, can meet the graduation assessment requirement through the same pathways as the class of 2017. You can view these charts on the State Department of Education website by going to the link we created on the right side of this graphic. First, the students can take and pass the PARCC assessments that are aligned to their English courses in grade 9, 10, and 11, and their math courses, including Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Second, the students can achieve certain scores on various alternative assessments such as the SAT, the PSAT, the ACT, the AccuPlacer, or the ASVAB. All the necessary passing scores for these alternative assessments are listed on the 2017 chart for your review. Third, if neither of the previous pathways are used to meet the graduation requirement, the students can complete and submit a portfolio assessment with the assistance of our school counseling department. Students in the class of 2020, our freshmen, can meet the graduation requirement through the same 3 pathways as those described for the classes of 2017, 2018, and 2019, with one difference. The class of 2020 must take all PARCC assessments associated with the high school courses in which they are enrolled and receive a valid score. Only after receiving a valid score in the PARCC assessments during grades 9, 10, and 11 can a student then use a score on an alternative assessment, such as the SAT or the PSAT, to meet their graduation requirement. And now, Jennifer Grimaldi, Director of School Counseling, will talk about the PARCC testing schedule, the materials and equipment associated with the test.
Thanks, Principal Moore. This is Jennifer Grimaldi, the Director of School Counseling at Washington Township High School. I'm going to review the testing schedule that is upcoming for our PARCC. Now, on Wednesday, April 19th, is the first day of PARCC testing. We're going to begin in the morning with the English Language Arts Unit 1. That runs for approximately 110 minutes, and then we also are running right afterwards the Math Unit 1, which runs for approximately 90 minutes. Day 2, which is going to be Thursday, April 20th, we have the ELA Unit 2, 110 minutes, and then we will be running the Math Unit 2 for 90 minutes. Friday, Day 3, April 21st, ELA Unit 3, 90 minutes, and Math Unit 3, 90 minutes. Now, our bell schedule will be adjusted on the testing days, and those days will equal out for teaching time for the teachers to cover the important instructional information that they need for classes and curriculum. Students will be reporting to homeroom unless otherwise notified. We will be testing in those homeroom locations. Some of the rooms we do have to relocate, and those students will be informed, and we're going to test in those locations for all 3 days, the 19th, 20th, and 21st. For testing materials and equipment, we are asking that the students bring their laptops fully charged. They must be fully charged. They must also bring the charger with them and double check their audio. If students do not bring the laptops the day of testing, they will have to test on a makeup day. We won't have extra laptops available to students. In addition to that, the students will need headphones, and these are the headphones that are actually wired, not Bluetooth or Lightning. So they are responsible for bringing that. We don't have enough headphones for all the students, so we ask that they cooperate and work with us on that point. Now for calculators, the students can bring the calculators. They must be clear before and after testing. So the teachers will prompt them to do so, but it will make the process go faster on testing day. Teachers will be checking if students in the testing locations have smartwatches, any fitness trackers, or anything else that connects to the internet, or to even take photos during that time that they need to be removed. They can, the students can keep them in their bag, which will be separate outside the testing room, or the teachers will be collecting that. So please make your child aware. And also, we have students who will be using the TestNav app on their laptops. They have already checked this during our technology check a few weeks ago, but it's just a double check for parents to make sure that your child has this. And we appreciate your assistance to make this process smooth. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Carol English. She is our supervisor of mathematics.
Good evening. I'm going to be presenting quite a bit of information, and it may appear overwhelming, but do not despair. This PowerPoint will be posted on my SchoolWires webpage. You can't talk about the New Jersey Learning Standards without talking about focus, coherence, and rigor. When we talk about focus, we're talking about less content but deeper thinking about it. We're not talking about discrete content. We're talking about students learning and seeing connections between the mathematical content that they're learning. When we talk about coherence, what we're talking about is how students progress throughout their mathematical career in the school system. So basically, instead of talking about this piece of content or that piece of content, what we're really talking about is how these pieces fit together into one cohesive plan of mathematical learning. When you talk about rigor, you're really talking about deep conceptual understanding. The standards have raised the bar to expect students to be able to think about what they're learning as well as converse about it. And so it's easier when we talk about rigor, it's easier to show what it isn't than to talk about what it is. And basically one of the things it boils down to is not just harder numbers to work with. Here are additional Algebra 1 domains. And here are the remaining domains for Algebra 1. When you look at the Algebra 2 domains, it's important to note that it's the same domains. In many instances, it's the same domains as in Algebra 1. It just takes things a little bit deeper and in a different direction. Here are additional Algebra 2 domains. And here are more Algebra 2 domains. And final Algebra domains. Notice that Algebra 2 also incorporates some measures of statistics. The geometry domains are going to look a lot different than the domains for Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Here's 4 more. And also, as well as in Algebra 2, geometry has a little bit of probability and statistics. As I stated earlier, I know I went through that content rather quickly, but this PowerPoint will be posted. But now let's talk about task types. There are 3 task types on the PARCC assessment. Basically, Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. Type 2 and Type 3 are more open-ended, short response, those types of questions. Type 1 is more multiple choice or multiple select. Here's an example of a Type 1 question. As I said in the last slide, it could be multiple choice, multiple select, and basically here what the students are expected to do is this is called a drag and drop. So basically they're given the answers, but they have to select them from the options and then drag them into the boxes that are provided. Type 2 problems go beyond multiple choice, multiple select. Basically, they're asking the students to justify something, like this problem here. This is a good example of that. Type 3 problems are where we're going to find that expectation for modeling. There's some justification here, but it's really more explanation. These are your application problems. Now we get to the heart of the matter. How can you help your child prepare? Please understand that there will be multiple opportunities for students to practice this in class, but more practice is always good, especially when it comes to test prep. Links are going to be provided for all of these items at the end of the PowerPoint, but basically what we need them to do is be familiar with typing mathematical formulas using an equation editor. It's much more difficult to type on a computer, type an equation on a computer than it is to type an essay. Go through the tutorial, practice with an online graphing calculator, and also solve the practice problems. It's really important that your child practice with the online graphing calculator, but understand that if they want to use their own handheld, they will be allowed to, but it's very important that they back up their programs to their computer before they use it, because they're going to have to give it to PARCC mandates that they give their calculator to a teacher to be cleared prior to use. So when the teacher clears it, they're going to lose everything that's not saved. So I implore you to please ask them to back everything up before testing. Thanks. Here are the links that I mentioned previously. There's links for online graphing calculators. There's links to PARCC practice. And basically students can reinforce the familiarity with the test and the aspects of the test outside of class. As I said earlier, especially for the online graphing calculators, it's much more difficult to type an equation than it is an essay, so please practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. My name is Melissa Barnett, and I am the new English Department Supervisor for Washington Township Schools. I'm going to give you a little bit of information in regards to the shift with the new standards for English for grades 9 through 11, as well as some information about PARCC and some sample items that you can get a better understanding of what the test looks like. So in 2016, the Common Core standards were revised by a committee of stakeholders across the school districts, teachers, supervisors, administrators, and whatnot, to reflect some of these essential skills. An example would be integration of literature and informational text. They wanted to still emphasize the importance of textual evidence. So when students are trying to support claims, they're referring back to the text to find their relevant information. A writing in variety of modes is very important with the new standards. We're trying to equip students with the ability to write for different purposes, for different audiences. And then, of course, we kept the emphasis on reading complex text at or above grade level. So teachers across the state have made some adjustments to meet these shifts in the standards so that students are being prepared for assessments, but most importantly for college and career. So in the classroom, the teachers are making sure that they're infusing complex texts both independently and instructionally. They're providing those supports for students to know how to navigate these materials. They are exposing students to a variety of genres in reading, as well as the expectation to be writing in various genres as well. Students are doing a lot more writing in response to what they are reading, so it's a connection between those two standards, the reading standards and the writing standards. Analysis and synthesis of their claims based on text evidence. So once again, that emphasis on going back to their reading materials to really find those proofs and evidences. And really, we're shifting away from assessing what is being discussed in the classroom in terms of, stories or literature, and we're really assessing students' skills and their ability to navigate a piece that has not been instructed and demonstrate mastery of those reading skills at an independent level. And then finally, a really significant shift is where we are really focused on teaching standards rather than teaching materials to students, so that when they go off into their college or career, they're able and they have the necessary skills that they're going to need to tackle any task. So let's spend a few minutes talking about PARCC, the PARCC assessment, and what this is measuring. So the real emphasis on this assessment is to measure the knowledge, skills, and understanding of key elements that are going to be essential for your child when they get into their college and their career. So first of all, PARCC is measuring how students are able to read and navigate complex text, which I mentioned before, which is evident in the standards. So can they look closely and analytically read a grade level text? They're being assessed on the vocabulary as it's used in those pieces. They're looking at a variety of reading sources. It could be something that's in literature, classical literature, it could be a science document, it could be a social studies primary document or whatnot. So they have to look at different types of readings and demonstrate mastery of those skills. And they're really looking to measure their comprehension and their critical thinking. Then they're looking to assess how students are effectively writing when they're using these sources that they're reading. So once again, that close reading strategy, that they're able to extract the most relevant textual evidence and supports, not just any textual evidence, and really provide a detailed explanation or summary or whatever it's asking them to claim when they're going back to multiple texts to really refer to and synthesize that information. And then finally, overall, their written expression and their knowledge of language, the English language. How are they developing their ideas? Is it organized? Is there clarity in their use of language? And do they really understand the basic conventions of English? So in this particular slide, this is a blueprint for the breakdown and components of each unit of the PARCC assessment for grades 6 through 11. So I'm not going to thoroughly explain this. This is really just for you to visually see the different types of tasks that students need to complete, and then the number of items in each of these units. Just a point of reference where it says EBSR, the number of points from EBSR, that is standing for evidence-based student responses. And then the TECR would be technology-enhanced responses. And then I'll show you some examples of that when we get to it further down in the presentation. So what I want to discuss here is the writing scoring rubrics that PARCC uses. And just so you know that these have been revised since the onset of the PARCC assessment. So these are tools that the scorers use to analyze the written expression for a research simulation task, a literary analysis, and a narrative writing prompt. On this slide, you can see I've provided a link so that you can pull up the actual rubrics by going to this page and then scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page when you get there to find where it says PARCC grades 6 through 11, ELA, literacy scoring rubrics. And then when you click that link, it'll bring up all of the rubrics and the criteria for scoring. So now I'd like to spend a few minutes going over some sample test items. So what I've included here is a grade 9 test item for a reading of Column and Running. So students would be asked to read this. It's actually a 10-paragraph excerpt, and then they would have a series of questions that follow. This is an example of a Part A, Part B question, where you can see that in Part A, they're asked what an actuary is, and then in Part B, they're asked to provide a clue from the text that would support how they answered Part A. So this is one of those evidence-based questions where students need to go back to the text to provide evidence for why they answered Part A the way that they did. For this particular sample, this is a 10th grade reading sample from Mark Twain, and this once again is a Part A, Part B question, and I just wanted to show you this example so that you can see this is a summary-based question. Which statement provides an accurate summary of the passage? And then for Part B, you can see students have choices from letters A through G, because for this question they have to select 3 details that support the summary that they selected for Part A. So this isn't a traditional type of multiple choice question, but what they have to do is they have to select 3 details from the text, so once again text evidence, to support what they answered in Part A. So here we get a sample narrative writing task for grade 10. This would be the final task that students would complete based on that same reading, Lost in the Snow by Mark Twain. So here the students are having to write a narrative using ideas and really take what they've read in that piece and write something that has a similar plot and theme but set in modern time and place. So this is going to really assess a student's ability to write a narrative where they're going to be assessed on their written expression and their command of standard English. This would be a sample of a TECR, a Technology Enhanced Constructed Response. So this is a grade 11 item. Here, Part A, the students have to identify 2 themes from a passage, and what they're having to do is drag them and drop them into those long rectangular boxes labeled Theme 1 and Theme 2. And then for Part B of this question, they have to drag and drop the best evidence to support each of those themes that they selected for Part A. So the technology enhanced piece is really that dragging and dropping, that selection, and then the drag and drop is really what it stands for. Finally, I wanted to show an example of a research simulation task. So this is from grade 9. And what the students have to do is they've already read a number of passages. And at this point, the students are being asked to refer to all 3 of those sources to write an essay in which they compare and contrast some particular aspect. So this one, for instance, write an essay in which you compare and contrast how the 3 sources demonstrate that sound is difficult to understand and discuss. So whatever it was they read was about the scientific topic of sound. So using all 3 sources as evidence, they have to now compose an essay doing a compare and a contrast. So this is quite challenging for students. They've just compiled a lot of new information as they've closely read 3 different passages. They have to extract evidences from each to compose this well-developed piece. Students once again are being assessed on their expression, their development of ideas, how they're organizing it, the clarity of their use of language, their command of the English language, and once again that real emphasis on pulling evidences from 3 sources. Well, I hope that that provided you with a good basic understanding of our New Jersey Student Learning Standards. some of the ways that we have shifted our instruction a bit in the classroom to really prepare students for college and career. And then finally, some of the aspects of PARCC and what it is we're trying to measure in terms of the mastery of standards that are really essential for students to be successful in their future. This final slide, I just wanted to provide you with some links to some more information you might be curious about. The first link will take you to some parent resources on the PARCC Online site, and then the second and preceding links will take you to some helpful information on the New Jersey Department of Education website, where you can pull up the standards, and then you can look at some information about why this assessment is a valuable tool for both students and teachers. I'd like to thank you for your time, and at this point I'll turn it back over to Ann Moore to wrap things up.
Thank you again for taking the time to view this presentation on the high school PARCC assessment. Before we leave, we would like to share some steps you can take in the days leading up to the test that will help your child be successful. Please take some time to look over your child's laptop to assure that it is in good physical condition. If you see that there are issues such as missing keys, a cracked screen, or other damage, please ask your child to report to the Township Tech Center, room C19, for technical assistance. Please be sure that your child has fully charged their laptop each night before testing and that they bring their charging cord to school each day. The students will need to use earbuds for part of the test, and they should plan to bring their own. Earbuds will not be provided. Earbuds with the standard 3.5 millimeter prong, as pictured on the slide, will be necessary. You can also assure that your child gets adequate sleep the night before each test day and something nutritious to eat each morning. If you have any questions regarding your student's laptop, please contact the 910 or the 1112 main offices, or your student can visit the Township Tech Center in C19. For questions regarding previous alternative assessment scores, please contact the school counseling office. For any other questions, please contact Mr. Jonathan Strout, Mr. Steve Selby, or myself. Thank you again for joining us for this presentation. We look forward to working together to support our students as they take the PARCC assessment.
In addition to this presentation, we'd also like to present you some of the questions and answers that were asked at the parent presentation night held at Washington Township High School on March 30th. At any time, you can stop this and read through these questions and answers. Once again, we thank you for your support in ensuring student success during this assessment.